Welcome back. Today I'm taking a look at the brand new Nitecore EDC27 flashlight. Let's check it out. This is everything the Nitecore EDC27 comes with. I'll give you a look at the box here. It also comes with a USB Type A to Type C charging cable. Here's your lanyard. Also some warranty information and your user manual. But I'll put all this off to the side here and I'll give you guys a nice close-up of the new Nitecore EDC27 flashlight. And while you guys are checking this out, let's talk about some of the features. All right, so the Nitecore EDC27 has a maximum output of 3,000 lumens, a maximum throwing distance of 220 meters, and a max intensity of 12,200 candela. You'll also get about 37 hours of runtime on its ultra-low setting. And kicking out those 3,000 lumens are two luminous SST40 LEDs with a wide flood white beam and a total reflective optic lens. It features 4 cyclable lighting modes plus turbo and strobe. And those lighting modes are controlled with dual stage, dual tail switches. There's a stainless steel body with a PVD titanium coating with a fine frosted matte finish and textured grips on the side. And powering the flashlight is a 3.7 volt, 1700 milliamp hour built-in lithium ion battery that you can charge with a USB Type C charging port on the outside. It also has a multifunctional OLED display that'll read out your lighting level, how many lumens on that level, and time remaining on the battery. It's impact resistant up to 1 meter and has an IP rating of 54. The 5 means it has a limited ingress of dust, and the 4 means it's basically splash proof from all directions. All right, let's talk dimensions. It has a length of 5.34 inches, a width of 1.24 inches, and a thickness of 0.56 inches. And according to my weight test, it comes in at 4.37 ounces. That's 124 grams. I'll tell you guys, I'm really loving my time with the EDC27 from Nitecore. I would say it's extremely close to the perfect everyday carry flashlight for me, except for a few negatives. And I'll talk about those negatives throughout this video. But first, let's talk about the interesting shape of the EDC27 here. So it's 5.34 inches long, which usually I complain about everyday carry flashlights being that long. But the EDC27 here makes up for it by being only about a ½ inch thick here. And being 1.24 inches wide is a fairly flat flashlight that fits very nicely in your pockets. So I'm willing to overlook the length here just based on the overall size of the EDC27. Plus, you can see that length, it's almost a perfect size in my hands here, except for the fact that there is no side switch. They're dual tail switches here. So if you hold your flashlight's underhand like this, the length does come into play when you have a side switch. So since there's dual tail switches, you have to hold the flashlight overhand like this, which means those 2 inches at the end are almost lost on this flashlight, meaning there's no real reason to have those extra inches. And I'm guessing they're using the extra length for either cooling or the extra battery space. And they're definitely going to need the cooling because this is a 3,000 lumen flashlight and it does get fairly hot. I'll do a heat test a little bit later on in this video. And I'll throw up this picture from the Nitecore website showing the copper and aluminum heat dissipation module that does take up a fairly good portion of that body. But you guys see what I'm trying to say here. If there was a side switch, the length would be absolutely perfect. Since there is no side switch, it could be slightly shorter as long as it doesn't affect the size of that battery. Now let's talk about the size of the battery. 3.7 volt, 1700 milliamp hour lithium ion rechargeable battery. That of course is built into the flashlight. Now that's definitely one of my negatives of the Nitecore EDC27. I'm not a big fan of built-in batteries in my flashlights. I like to be able to switch out the batteries whenever they drain. But just based on the shape of the EDC27 here, its flat nature, I'm not really sure what else they can do here. It's not like you can just plop in a 21700 here or even double A's just based on how thin the flashlight is. So in this case, yes, I'm still counting the built-in battery as a negative, but honestly, I'm not really sure what else they can do here. And regarding the body here, it has a stainless steel body with that PVD titanium coating and that matte finish. It feels really, really nice. And it is a scratch resistant and fingerprint resistant coating. So you can see I'm touching the heck out of it and I'm not really leaving a mark. And yes, even though it is a scratch resistant coating, it doesn't mean it's scratch proof. I'm sure I can take one of my blades and scratch the heck out of it. They're just saying with everyday use, you shouldn't be able to put scratches on this just being in your pockets. Now let me give you a look right down the barrel there at those two luminous SST40 LEDs. Now the beam that comes out of this flashlight is a fairly wide beam, which is perfect. I love wide beams in my EDC flashlights, but it is more of a white beam. I sort of wish it was more of a neutral white. And I'm not sure if you guys can see that total reflective optic lens right there. It's sort of tough to see, but yeah, it's in there. And on the back here, there's a pretty long stainless steel pocket clip with a decent amount of tension. Now, this isn't really meant to be a removable pocket clip, but you can see you can remove it if you want to with those two screws. And I was just talking about the body here, but they have these molded textured grips right here. So when you're holding it overhand, those grips are in a perfect spot. This actually feels very nice in your hands. Doesn't feel like it's just gonna fall out or anything like that. I do like these grips on each side of the flashlight. And I am a fan of Nitecore's multifunctional OLED display. So you can see it shows your level, your lumens, and the amount of time remaining on the battery. All right, let's go over the lumens and runtime information. It has 4 cyclable modes: ultra low, low, mid, and high. Ultra low is 15 lumens, and that's your maximum 37 hours of runtime. Low is 65 lumens, has an 11-hour runtime. Mid is 200 lumens. You're going to get 3 hours and 45 minutes there. And then there's your 1000 lumen high. You're going to get about an hour and 45 minutes there. Now, turbo and strobe are both 3000 lumens. And they're both accessed through the mode button right there. So your dual tail switches, this is your on and off button, and then this is your mode button. But these don't function the way your traditional on and off or mode buttons work. And I really like this. I don't think I have another flashlight with a UI such as the EDC27 here, where both the mode and the on off button have a half press that do something different, which leads me into the UI here. So this is your on off button. To access your cyclable modes, you have to give that on and off button a full press and click. And instead of traditionally hitting that mode button to cycle through ultra low, low, mid, and high, you have to mid press that on and off button. So once you start mid pressing the on and off button there, it's all done with the same switch, and that cycles through your modes. Now, I do like this. Like I said, I don't think I have another flashlight that works quite like this, because usually it's a full press on and then start cycling through your modes with the mode button. And now the mode button has a completely separate job where if it's off or on, if you half press that mode button, that's where you get your 3000 lumen turbo. And if you full press that mode button, there's your 3000 lumen strobe. So it's really interesting that Nitecore went with a dual stage, dual tail button design here. And as much as I like that decision, one of my negatives is that there's a slight learning curve to this, because just by muscle memory, I want to turn it on and then start cycling the modes, and you see what happens. You're just going to blind anybody in the near vicinity just based on that turbo and the strobe. So that's what I'm saying, that there's a slight learning curve that you have to get used to. Full click and then half click through the modes. Now let's get back to the lighting modes here. It does have an instant access to ultra low. If I press and half hold that button, I'm not fully pressing it in, it's just a little half press. From off only, there is your instant access to ultra low. And yes, it does have a memory, so if I put it on high here, turn it off, turn it right back on, it does remember our last lighting mode. But I do like the fact that no matter which lighting mode I leave it off on, if I half press it and hold, it gives me that instant ultra low. I like that. So there's an instant access to ultra low, an instant access to turbo, and an instant access to strobe, all in the same UI. And yes, of course, there is a lockout here. What you have to do is click the on off button right here once, and then click it again right away and hold. So click and then hold it down. It should go to half and then full lockout mode. In number 1, half lockout mode, the on-off button does not work, but you still have access to turbo and strobe. And in number 2 lockout mode, which I'm on right now, it's a full lockout where I don't have access to any of the buttons. And then what you have to do to unlock it is do the same thing. Full click and then right away hold it down. You'll see that little key timer that unlocks the flashlight. So you guys know my thoughts on the dual stage, dual tail switch design here. What do you guys think of the instant access to turbo and instant access to strobe all through the same button? I think that's fantastic. Even though I think there is a slight learning curve with this on-off button having a multi-purpose on-off and switching the modes. Also, these buttons are not rubber buttons. They're a hard plastic feeling button, which is normally fine, but with the half press UI that Nitecore has here in the EDC27, that on-off button, it feels just a little bit squishy when I'm trying to access that half press. That half press should be very pronounced, meaning I press it in and have no problems hitting it. But on occasion, I do have problems hitting that half press just because it feels a little bit squishy. It feels like there's a couple other stops in there, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain until you guys actually get this and play with it. I just wish that on and off button was just a little bit more pronounced with the half stop. It's not very definitive. And I forgot to show you guys this. On turbo, when you half press the mode button, there's going to be a little timer right there. So there really is no runtime for turbo. It's just whenever that timer runs out, what it's going to do is going to step down, I believe, back into high. That's right there. You can just see that. But the nice thing is, if you want to, you can just go right back into it. And I've tested this about 5 or 6 times. You can do this as many times as you want. As you can see there. It's just going to get very, very hot with the flashlight. Oh, there you go. See, I have very limited time right there just because it's getting a little bit hotter. And yeah, look at that, just half the time. So just keep that in mind if you need access to that 3000 lumens over and over again. And it feels really hot right here at the head. So let's do the heat test now. All right, so I let the flashlight run for about 2 minutes. And of course I had to hold down the turbo button over and over and over again. That's why you see the light keep flashing in the video. But there's no constant turbo, so I had to keep holding down the button. After about 2 minutes, you can see it topped out at about 168 degrees Fahrenheit at the head. That is extremely hot. After 2 minutes at 168 degrees, wow. And at the body, you can see is right around 90, 92, I think even topped out at 93 degrees, which is perfectly fine. You don't need gloves at the body at all. So if you're gonna be using this on turbo for any extended amount of time, your hand's gonna be near the tail in the middle of the flashlight anyways, but once you touch that head, it's gonna be extremely hot at almost 170 degrees Fahrenheit. So basically, don't use the turbo over and over again for 2 minutes straight like I was doing here for this test. Just get that 3000 lumen burst and put it right back to that 1000 lumen high. You should be fine. All right, here we are in my new studio. It's a bit of a disaster. It's still a work in progress, but let's check out ultra low right there. That wall's about 20 feet away. And then there's low. And the only lights on are that little blue light and my computer, those little accent lights right there. They're not really putting out a ton of light. There's medium. And then there's 1000 lumen high. So that high inside with that wide flood beam, that's pretty decent. And now turbo, that turbo at 3000 lumens is extremely bright. So ultra low, low, mid, high, turbo. Very nice. Let's take this outside. All right, you can see it's very cold out here. Very snowy, but there's ultra low. I'm just gonna switch right to low right there. Sweep across the field. Now there's mid. Those trees back there are about 114 meters away. That structure is 109 meters away. So switch to high, 1000 lumens. So you can see I'm having a little bit of trouble hitting those back trees there, even at 114 meters. But you can see that beam is fairly wide and floody, which I do like in my everyday carry flashlights. Now let's hit turbo, boom. Very nice. Sweep across the field. We're not gonna get much turbo out of this. There you go, it already stepped down. So ultra low, low, mid, and high. 95% of the time, you're gonna be in this high mode, obviously. This is a 1000 lumen flashlight with a 3000 lumen burst. And it's a sorry, my mouth is already frozen. It's a fairly even beam, as you guys can see. I'm not really getting much of a pronounced hotspot or even a outer edge. As you can see, it's just all over the place. So the beam isn't very uniform, but you guys get the idea. This is a very bright burst. There's a lot of cars going by me right now. That's where all that noise is. I'm like right near the road. But let's change locations here. All right, here's my side yard here. Start out with ultra low. And guys, yeah, it's winter time here. I'm near Buffalo, New York. So it's gonna be snowy. I know what a lot of you guys are gonna say, that the snow is gonna be reflecting back and it's not gonna give you an accurate idea of what this beam really looks like. There's low, mid, and then there's high, which is true, but we all don't live in perfect climates. We all don't live in California. Like I said, I live in New York, and this is what we deal with probably 4 to 5 months out of the year, no lie. That tree right there is about 70 meters away. Let me hit it with that 3000 lumen burst. There's 1000 lumens, 3000. If I sweep across this field, see that 3000 lumens. And now I'm starting to see that back tree line, but we're much closer to that tree line. So you guys know those maximum throwing numbers are a little bit, they're very generous, I should say. Just the slightest bit of light falls on a surface and they'll count it. But you guys saw when I was back at the road, 114 meters, I can barely see that back tree line. But you guys get the idea. I'm going back inside, my hands are freezing. So I really think Nitecore is onto something here with the EDC27. As I said before, this could be the perfect everyday carry flashlight if they fixed a few negatives that could be fixed in a version 2. First off, I love the flat shape of this flashlight with this extra long pocket clip. It feels nice in the pocket. It's a 1000 lumen flashlight with a 3000 lumen burst, and that 3000 lumens is very bright. That 220 meters I feel is a little bit generous. Maybe you guys got that in controlled testing in a lab somewhere, but in real life testing, I could barely see my trees at 114 meters away. But that's fine because I'm carrying this as an everyday carry flashlight, which I want flood in my everyday carry flashlights, and this definitely delivers. I love a dual tail switch design, and I really like the dual stage dual tail switch design here, where you can get instant access to turbo, instant access to strobe, and instant access to ultra low. I love that there's a lockout, but basically with these buttons on the top like this in your pocket, you basically have to have a lockout. With any of my Nitecore flashlights with that multifunctional OLED display, I just wish every flashlight had something similar. So there is a lot to like about the EDC27. Now let's talk about some of my cons here. The first con I really didn't discuss throughout this video. I mentioned it, but this is only IP54 rated. The 5 for dust proofing is fine. That's close to being completely dust proof, but the 4 is what I have a problem with. The 4 means this flashlight is basically splash proof from all directions. As a flashlight that I intend to carry every day in my pocket, I need at least a 6 or 7 or an 8 rating for my waterproof. That 4 simply is too low. If I get caught in the rain, I don't even know if the rain's gonna hurt this just because it's splash proof. Another con is the built-in 1700 milliamp hour battery. Anytime there's a built-in battery to a flashlight, that's going to be a negative in my book, even though honestly, I'm not really sure what else they can do with the size and the shape of this flashlight. And the next con, it might just be my flashlight here, but this on and off button feels a little bit squishy to me. And when you're talking about a dual stage button, I want a very definitive half step right there, especially when switching my modes. So I wish you guys can feel this. There's just a little bit of play right there where I sort of feel a click. that first click, it should go right to half and then right to the full press on. And the last negative, it might just be a personal negative, but there's a slight learning curve to this flashlight. Just based on muscle memory, I turn on my flashlight to instantly go to that mode button to switch my lighting modes. But for this, that mode button goes right to that 3000 lumen turbo, and you will blind somebody if they're in close proximity. So like I said, that just might be a learning curve for me and might not be for you, but I'm still counting that as a negative. But I really like the direction Nitecore's going with the EDC27 at 90 bucks. I still think this is a great deal, especially for a 3000 lumen burst, 1000 lumen flashlight. And maybe down the road we can get a version 2 and they can improve upon this design. I'm looking forward to that. All right, guys, that's pretty much it for this video. What do you think of the Nitecore EDC27? Now, if you want to check this out for yourself, I will have links down below in my description box. But if you did enjoy this video, please give me that thumbs up. Please subscribe. My hands, they're frozen. I can't even point. And go!